Hello imaginative people and welcome to Brainstorium. I'm Anna Tizard, award-winning dream punk and deeply weird fantasy author. And yes, that's me and my fiction that's deeply weird. As ever, I'm your reliably zany inspiration mystic, here to talk about creative writing, brainstorming story ideas, and how to take your imagination into new uncharted territory. Today, in episode 14, I have a mix of new story ideas suggested by listeners who've been busy dreaming up new interpretations of some of the most difficult Exquisite Corpses that have cropped up on the show. I have a bit about storytelling from an evolutionary psychology perspective, and an announcement about a new upcoming book release. And once we've played a game or three of Exquisite Corpse, I also have a Halloween challenge for you. So, what are we waiting for? Let's get on with the show. Right, I'm going to jump straight in to some interpretations of a particular Exquisite Corpse which came up on episode 12, which was the clownish train trudged up the mountain pass with the false author. Shaq Alexander, who I met on Twitter, suggested this story idea. An author goes on a train that travels through different dimensions and environments to find inspiration. While searching for the origins of the train, they build a sense of worth. Such a fascinating idea. There's so much you could do with this. In fact, the more I think about it, the more this feels like the perfect metaphor for my journey through Brainstorium, or in fact anyone's journey as a storyteller. Writing is like a weird train you get onto. You don't really know where it's going, or you might have an inkling, but you haven't seen it yet. Not until you get there. And this train, as Shaq suggests, travels through a whole range of different dimensions and environments, which are really like places, in inverted commas, you'll find in your imagination when you tap into it. You might find yourself in the forests of high fantasy, the mountains of the unknown, rivers of ideas passing through. Who knows what characters you might meet along the way, and on the train as well. Is the train full of other authors, or just people travelling into their imagination? I guess it could be other types of artists as well. How far can we stretch this metaphor? Writing is an exploration of places that don't exist and yet become real in your mind as you step into them. Exactly like a journey, or many journeys, different journeys, and searching for the origins of the train. This feels especially like Brainstorium for me. I'm trying to get closer to the enigma of inspiration through this podcast, sometimes looking to my own experiences as a writer, other times dipping into surrealism, especially in the earlier shows, and breaking down the psychology of storytelling to try and find some answers to what is inspiration, how can we be more inspired, as well as, of course, asking other writers how they're inspired. It is a journey, perhaps even a ticket on a clownish train chugging up the mountain pass. There's also, I want to tell you, there's a goblin on Twitter, a poet's goblin. Actually, I've talked about this person before because they did once write a short poem about Exquisite Corpse, which I read out on the show. And this poet's goblin regularly offers to write poems off the cuff for anyone who'll ask about pretty much anything you like. So naturally, I had to ask, could they try and write a poem based on this same Exquisite Corpse? Actually, I think I offered 2 different Exquisite Corpses, so they had a choice, and said I could offer more suggestions in case it was going to be too much of an ask. because it's one thing brainstorming a story idea from one of these sentences, but writing a poem? That's like a whole other level of creativity. Anyway, the poet's goblin also went for the clownish train trudged up the mountain pass with the false author, in spite of the other suggestions. They honed in on the false author part in particular, and here's the result. Garish the colours of the engine, foolish people can't imagine. I am not who I say I am, not the silent little lamb who writes silly little tales. Atop these steep iron rails, I shall rob these blinded fools with my wit and charm as tools. I love it. And the poet goblin has really developed that sense of a false author, someone who's up to no good, but using their writing skills to trick people, rob people, with their wit and charm as tools. Oh, I think I've missed my vocation. Could I use my imagination and writing skills to trick people and steal from them? Maybe not. That's not my way, but it would be a great story to write, wouldn't it? Evil authors on a train, on a clownish train, a train full of scary clowns, and yet the author turns out to be the scariest one among them. I also had a very different interpretation of what I thought was one of the hardest exquisite corpses I have ever come across. The loving horizon passed through the TSA checkpoint with the galloping pickle. That galloping pickle gets me every time. This one also, funnily enough, came up in episode 12 of Brainstorium. And for those who are unfamiliar with TSA, because I had to look it up, it means Transportation Security Administration, just the checkpoint in an airport. So we're talking about a loving horizon going through an airport checkpoint with a galloping pickle. Of course we are. I think on the show I managed to come up with something about the light shining through the glass, the last light of the day, as someone, inexplicably dressed as a pickle, was running away from a scary situation to get onto a plane and just get away to another country. And leading up to that point, when they finally reached the airport, I imagined it might be like one of those films when someone's being chased in a city and they come across a parade where they can hide. This just happens to be a vegetable parade. A harvest celebration. Our protagonist ducks in one side, hiding behind a float in the shape of a giant potato, and they come out the other side dressed as a pickle. A perfect disguise. Of course, there's now a naked person somewhere in the parade wondering what happened to their pickle suit. And of course, when our protagonist gets to the airport dressed as a pickle, the security guards working on the TSA checkpoint wouldn't be suspicious at all of this. No, it's fine. But get this, Fraser Armitage, my author friend, found another way to interpret the Exquisite Corpse. In fact, he made it look easy and there was no dodgy parade. He said, and I quote, "This one was hilarious." I agree with you there, Fraser. After you explained it, I got to thinking and I wondered whether the loving horizon and the galloping pickle could be the names of paintings. He says, perhaps someone at an auction house or gallery has been smuggling one painting underneath another as they ship them to buyers. The story could be that the person's getting fired and this is their last opportunity to pull off this type of heist, and so they go for broke and try to smuggle the loving horizon, which is a super famous painting, by hiding it under the galloping pickle, a painting that people consider worthless. The person could be fleeing the country and the whole story could hinge on whether they make it to freedom with this fortune. The crucial moment would be when the paintings pass through the checkpoint. Oh my goodness, Fraser, you have found the key! And I realise, as I keep realising it seems, that I have this habit of assuming that at least one of the nouns in any exquisite corpse must be personified, turned into a character, a sentient being. That if you come across a loving horizon, okay, that's got to be something else, but then I automatically think, right, let's try and make a character out of the second noun, which is, oh dear, a galloping pickle. But of course you can decide that both nouns are just things, objects, and that the characters have not been accounted for, that they exist outside of the sentence of the exquisite corpse. And paintings, that's genius! I asked Fraser how he came up with this idea, and he said, I got to thinking about why the action of going through customs security at an airport might cause conflict, and that's when I got the smuggling idea, and the rest just slotted into place. But that's often how these things go. When I hear you interpreting the results, it's often one idea that unlocks the whole thing. Isn't it strange how the brain just needs one particular detail and then all the links just mesh? Very true. I think there's a lot to be said about the connections our brains seem to want to make, and that certainly works in our favour when it comes to making up or developing stories. Once we have a little bit of knowledge and guidance as to what a story needs in order to work, as you said, Fraser, conflict. Look for conflict and the rest may follow. There's a little piece of speculative psychology in this, if you just scrape the surface. I think, at base, humans are puzzle solvers. We want to understand the world, probably even need to understand a certain amount about the world in order to feel safe in it, with the level of consciousness that we now have compared to other animals. All evolution comes from striving, and limitations against that striving that cause us to have to adapt. Every creature on Earth is really just trying to survive and thrive. But somewhere along the way, we've become almost too intelligent for plain old survival. We've become a sort of self-made paradox. We've gone beyond adaptation by creating our own environments to suit our needs, rather than adapting to what's already there in nature. Maybe that's why it can be difficult to maintain that awareness that we are a part of nature, because we seem to control so much of our physical lives, like our homes, our streets, and so on. But this control is an illusion, at least in part. In fact, the one thing we're most frightened of as a species is the unknown. You might even say that our development of complex languages is the ultimate attempt to defend ourselves against the unknown. If we label everything, give everything names, definitions, explanations through science, then we're better at understanding the things that might otherwise frighten us if their workings were still mysterious. We feel more in control, but we don't control the world any more than we can catch a lightning bolt and send it back up into the sky. We've just come to understand the lightning bolt so it doesn't scare us silly when it strikes, and we've built homes and offices that generally protect us from the weather. Where am I going with this? Well, I think it works in our favour as writers and imaginists that we're hardwired to solve problems and to try and understand things without even necessarily intending to consciously. We look for patterns and meaning. We want patterns and meaning in everything. The idea that everything is chaotic is frightening and just not right to us. So on a much smaller and less frightening scale, when presented with a seemingly impossible puzzle like an exquisite corpse, which hasn't even been designed as a puzzle, it doesn't have a right answer like a crossword that's been deliberately put together. No, there is no golden answer. It's all random. And yet our minds, so set on finding connections between things, on imposing meaning upon things and finding patterns in them, we find a way to make sense of nonsense. A deeper question would be, are we imposing artificial meanings, or are we finding them? Is all of life imbued with meaning inherently, or are we just making it all up? There you go. Is that deep enough for you? Storytelling from an evolutionary psychology perspective, even if it's a little bit speculative. Do we have an inbuilt natural ability to create stories? To some extent, you could argue that. But in my opinion, the best approach to being a storyteller is to embrace learning. I am always learning and relearning, it seems. Refreshing what I've previously learned, because it's all about practice and putting things into practice. These little nuggets of information about process and techniques. Practice is what helps you take these things on board as they begin to become intuitive to you as you write. So intuitive that you might go and forget them consciously as you try brainstorming a story. That happens to me all the time. So yes, we already know that a story hinges on conflict, yet it's still so fresh to hear that Fraser's technique of actually trying to look for the cause of conflict first, or above all else, when we tackle a new exquisite corpse, it's a great idea. It feels new. It gives us a new perspective. Conflict is ultimately what we need to get to when we're writing a story, so why not make this the very first thing we look for? Now, before we move on to word games and new story ideas, new puzzles, I wanted to tell you a bit about the next Brainstorium show, which is due to be broadcast on the 2nd of October 2022. And I have a new release coming up. Not yet another book in the Book of Exquisite Corpse, but an ebook anthology of winter-themed stories that I was honoured to be invited to contribute to. It's called Midwinter Magic and Mayhem, edited by Frances Evelyn, and it's a collection of short stories by a range of different fantasy authors. It is in fact the first book-length anthology where I've had an Exquisite Corpse story published, rather than a normal story. Well, I can't really call them normal, it would be dream punk or something like that, but a fantasy based on something other than Exquisite Corpse. You know what I'm saying. The ebook is due for general release on the 15th of October, but subscribers to my Deeply Weird newsletter will get a free pre-publication copy on the 8th of October. For any future listeners, I just need to mention I'm recording this in 2022. So in October 2023, I'm sure the book will still be available on Amazon and the rest. But yeah, for now, in 2022, subscribers can get a free copy. So if you haven't already subscribed to my newsletters, which are free by the way, hurry on over to annatizard.com and click one of the subscribe buttons. After that, a confirm button will be emailed to you, and you usually have to go into your spam email to find this, but once you've hit confirm, you'll automatically be sent to a secret page where you can download the usual freebies I give away to subscribers, which are The Empty Danger, Volume 1 in the Book of Exquisite Corpse, and Barely Composed, which is an exclusive short story about a classical composer who meets the demon of death metal. And being subscribed means you will be in line to receive an email on the 8th of October with a private link to your free ebook of this new anthology, Midwinter Magic and Mayhem. So make sure you subscribe and confirm in time for this, and don't miss out. In the next Brainstorium show, which will be out on 2nd of October, so about a week before that private subscriber-only release, I'll be talking about the stories that are in the anthology, what to expect, and also sharing what the other authors have said about inspiration, where they get it from, and any other tricks and quirks of their writing processes that they want to share, as well as some anecdotal oddities of my own. You know, they'll be coming up. A juicy show to come on the 2nd of October, but make sure you subscribe in the meantime. Now, for today, I think you'll agree that it is time to reach for the socks of destiny. Let us see what the socks of destiny have in store for us today. The first word is from Mariah White. The noun is from Fraser Armitage, playwright. Are we referring to their race? That's I don't know. We could white could mean something else. Perhaps if they're frightened. Let us try for an action. This is from Becky_Clough. Poked up a chimney. Okay. Right then. Who or what did they? Well, hopefully what? Not a who. This is from Fraser Armitage. Wired. Ooh, that could mean a few different things. Sort of edgy and intense, or literally wired if it's something that has wires running through it, or possibly even intoxicated, I suppose. Okay. This kind of puts a little bit of pressure on this final noun. So we have Travis, or is it MFI? M Fibrillations. I can't read my own handwriting. There we go. That's his Twitter ID. Publishing house executive. Oh my goodness. Okay, let me gather myself. We have the white playwright poked up a chimney. The Wired publishing house executive. I don't believe it. This makes sense. A playwright is poking a publishing house executive up a chimney. Oh my goodness me. Give me a moment, I need to write this down. Okay, I admit I paused for that. Oh my goodness. So, is this revenge or vengeance upon the playwright's publishing house executive for making bad decisions about publication, not marketing them enough, bad-mouthing them at some dinner party, not supporting them enough, not paying them enough, pushing them in a certain direction, saying the play should be more about more about romance, forget the murder. You need to change your plots. And then everything going wrong when the script just falls apart or just doesn't sell. Gosh, I'm not used to these things like making sense and coming together like this. But poked up a chimney, I mean, what's the reason for this very peculiar type of vengeance? I think I'm going to need some green tea for this. Where's my spoon? There we go. Right. Okay. Not a lot in there because I admit I had some earlier. Right. Let's make sense of this. Why would anyone poke a person up a chimney? What a choice of action. Okay. Actually, chimney sweep is a pretty, or has been in the past, obviously it's no longer anymore, that a pretty lowly occupation. Perhaps it has significance to this playwright. If they are either, if this is either set in Victorian times or perhaps before that, or if their script is set in Victorian times, and this publishing house executive has really knocked them, whatever they've done to fail the playwright. But the idea that they're white and perhaps frightened or shocked, I like that idea. It's more imaginative to me than say just going by someone's race. Yeah, and wired. A wired publishing house executive. Is it that they're intense, or is it that they are a robot executive? Okay, this is getting weirder. Is it getting too weird? This is the question. So the playwright invites her publishing house executive round for a meal, or perhaps just, for an afternoon tea to discuss business. Maybe even sign a contract on a new script, something like that. Welcome into my home. So she lets him in, sits him down, perhaps pours some tea in front of the fire. It's a very old-fashioned, cottagey type of house, and the executive has a look around and admires this old-fashioned decor, while the playwright stirs the tea, goes into the kitchen for more biscuits, something like that. What a lovely fireplace you have. And then the playwright, unable to resist the urge, pokes him up the chimney. As you do. I mean, she must be furious about something. She refuses to sign the contracts and instead has shoved him up the chimney. I don't know why this is making me think of the Three Little Pigs. Oh gosh, it's the whole house thing. Okay, well this is bizarre, although I am intrigued by the idea of a robot publishing house executive. Could there be such a thing? Maybe the playwright suspects this. Doesn't seem the most logical test to find out by poking them up the chimney, but hey, it's a very imaginative and unusual playwright who's been driven spare by all the work that she's had to put into rewriting this script. She's had enough, and she's ready to boot him up the chimney. Who are we to judge? Okay, I think it's time for another Exquisite Corpse. A more sensible one this time? I don't know. Let's just see. Oh, they're all getting tangled up. Okay, so this is from Twitter ID Yashel_Chisti, and it is despondent. Okay, who or what was despondent? This is from Tess_2020. Again, that's their Twitter ID. Komodo dragon. Okay. I think they can be poisonous, can't they? They're quite dangerous. In fact, I think they can eat animals much bigger than them, like deer and things like that. Wonder why a Komodo dragon would be despondent. Maybe the deer got away. Right. Action word. This is from Mariah. Sat in a tree with. Okay. Well, let's see. That could be tricky to get the conflict out of, actually. We might have to be rather imaginative about that one. This word is from Fraser Armitage. Irascible. Okay, there's the conflict. And who or what was irascible? This is from someone called Athena, ending in a capital A. Settler. Oh. So I'll just read out the whole thing. The despondent Komodo dragon sat in a tree with the irascible settler. Okay, I mean, settler could mean all sorts of things. Could just mean someone who's settled for something, who isn't particularly happy with their life circumstances, or a relationship, or somewhere they've moved to, or even a job, but they've settled for it. Or it could mean someone who has moved from another country and settled somewhere new. And why is the Komodo dragon despondent? I find that difficult to imagine. They don't have very expressive faces, I guess, sort of lizard-like, but I'm not even sure they can climb trees. Can they climb trees? I'm picturing them from when I've seen them on wildlife documentaries. They move quite slowly and then they flick their tongues out, quite menacing. So if a Komodo dragon could sit in a tree, why would they choose to do so? And I imagine it would be quite difficult. And how did they end up with an irascible settler? Now that's almost an oxymoron if you're thinking about someone who settles for something. Because you'd think someone who settles for something would be, okay, dum-de-dum, I guess I'll just put up with it, if you're going with that interpretation of the word settler. But irascible is quick to anger and hot-tempered. Kind of what I'd expect the Komodo dragon to be a bit like, since they're so predatory. And yet the Komodo dragon is despondent. I wonder if it's lost its mojo and has a discussion with an irascible settler or an irascible person who, for whatever reason, is sitting in a tree. Maybe there's a flood. Wherever they are, there's a flood, and they've both landed up in a tree together. The Komodo dragon feeling kind of despondent, and the settler, well, hot-tempered and irascible. Could this be a bizarre story in which they sort of learn from each other and discuss what it means to be a Komodo dragon, what it means to be a settler, decisions they've made? In some way, I feel they have to learn from each other and maybe even swap perspectives Oh, there's an idea. What if it's one of those situations where people have a personality swap? So you've got a random person who's moved from a different country, finds themselves in a nightmare situation where there's a flood going on, they climb a tree, feeling really grumpy, they turn around, there's a Komodo dragon sat next to them, feeling rather despondent. Something happens while they're sitting in a tree. If there's a flood going on, what do you not do in a storm, okay? Because you've got to be careful about lightning. So does the tree get struck by lightning and then something happens? The strike of lightning causes their personalities or souls to be swapped. Okay, that is truly bonkers. Oh dear. Okay, an unlikely duo, but you could try. Who knows where it would go if you started writing this story? Who knows? Okay, I think it's time for the third one. Let's see. Come on, number 3, give us a good one. It's got to make sense, but not that much sense, you know. Right, this is from Joseph Clark. Multi-dimensional. Oh gosh. Puts a little bit of pressure on this next noun, doesn't it? What or who was multi-dimensional? Now they're all pouring out. This is from The Poet's Goblin. Hound. A multi-dimensional hound. Wow. Okay. I'm trying to picture this dog. Right, and this is a picture of a dog. If it's multi-dimensional, don't know. Right, this is from Ian Nathaniel Cohen. Donned their armour to face. Whoa, that's weird. Okay. A multi-dimensional dog with armour who is ready to confront their arch enemy, who is... This is from Anonymous. Eternal. Right. Eternal. This is from Tom. Congressperson. Do you get eternal congresspersons? Sorry, congress people. Oh, goodness me. Okay, so let me just read the whole thing out. The multi-dimensional hound donned their armour to face the eternal congressperson. Well, perhaps there's a piece of legislation that the congressperson has passed or influenced that really angers this multi-dimensional hound to the point that they want to don their armour to face them. And an eternal congressperson. I'm finding that a tricky one to face. What legislation or law could really upset a multi-dimensional hound these days? One that says you must have one dimension. You're not allowed to be multi-dimensional, you hound. Oh, but if the hound was a sidekick character, a sidekick to someone who travels through different dimensions, okay, so the main character is not in the Exquisite Corpse. I'm trying out these new methods. How am I doing? Then that maybe the congressperson is kind of, I don't know, are they a kind of secret agent or something? They are, on the surface of it, trying to uphold the law and blend in, okay, as a lawmaker, but actually they know about this whole underworld where a few individuals, very talented individuals, are using high-tech gadgets to go into different dimensions. And so on the quiet, because they're worried about the disruption that this could cause in future to ordinary society, they are very quietly behind the scenes trying to stop these people from going between different dimensions, travelling through space and time, breaking the laws of time and space. And something has caused this one character we have, who's going to be the protagonist, to get stuck in one particular dimension, just as they were coming back through into this world. In fact, their sidekick dog, their little hound, has jumped through, and then the barriers come up where the protagonist is now stuck in this other world that they've been travelling back and forth to. And it's all because of something this Congress person has done behind the scenes to lock down these portals into other dimensions. God, this is a real stretch of the imagination. I realise this. But now, of course, we must face the image of this multi-dimensional hound donning its armour to face this eternal Congress person. Ooh, if they're eternal, then this Congress person has been somehow abusing the same technology in secret to give themselves immortality. There you go. This is a bit of a tangle, but if you're into sci-fi and fantasy, maybe this is easier to wrap your head around. Will I ever write this? I don't know. I like the idea. Perhaps you could start the story right in this point where the protagonist is actually locked inside, locked away from this world in this other dimension, while the hound goes to face this Congress person. And from this scene of conflict, I think it's going to have to be a talking dog. Or someone that calls themselves the Hound. I don't know. The multi-dimensional hound. But anyway, what I'm saying is that you can start wherever you feel like, but start from the point in the story that really inspires you. And it may just be a way in. It may not end up being the first scene, of course, if you end up writing something much longer, but it's the way in. Just try writing a particular scene that inspires you, see where it takes you, and just sense that world almost building itself around and outside of, beyond the scene that you've got. Perhaps in this confrontation, the Congress person will let slip the fact that they've been abusing this technology to give themselves immortality, or perhaps the hound doesn't see that. Perhaps that's just for the reader to know. So you have a little scene with a Congress person on their own just before they're ambushed by this hound, and something they do in front of someone or on their own gives away the fact that they are immensely powerful and have dark secrets, and also have immortality potentially. So maybe we know that little bit more than the hound does, or the protagonist, the person that the hound is trying to protect. So many different things. I think once you start delving into character possibilities, that's when it really starts to blossom. Not a bad session, if I may say so. Now, before you go, I want you to know that I am looking for flash fiction stories for the upcoming Halloween episode of Brainstorium, which is due out on the 30th of October 2022. Why not have a go? The word count can be anything from 400 words to 2,000. It must be based on an Exquisite Corpse result, and I've put together a list of suggested Halloween Exquisite Corpses, but you could use any Exquisite Corpse that's cropped up on any of the shows. I'll read out the Halloween list for you in a moment, but don't worry about grabbing a pen, because I'll list these in the show notes as well. The deadline for entries is 8th of October 2022, so this is just to allow a bit of time for any edits I might suggest. Be prepared for that too. And of course, anyone whose story I feature on a show will get a full shout out. So if you have a website or a social media account you'd like me to announce during the show, just so people can look you up afterwards if they've enjoyed your story, please do include that when you get in touch with me, as well as a short summary of what you normally write if you are in fact an established author. Again, that just gives people a sense of who you are if they want to look you up afterwards. Now, before I read out the Halloween suggestion list, the suggested Exquisite Corpses on which to base a story, don't forget that you don't necessarily have to use the entire Exquisite Corpse. You can choose any adjective-noun combination plucked from any of these, and each one, of course, has two, one at the beginning, one at the end. And I'll give you an example in a moment. So the first one is the disgruntled ghost hunter eloped with the the anthropomorphic mushroom. I really love this one. I had to include it in the list. So just talking about that whole adjective noun thing, you could just write a short story about a disgruntled ghost hunter, okay? Or you could just write about an anthropomorphic mushroom. Or, of course, you could write something about the whole thing where a disgruntled ghost hunter elopes with an anthropomorphic mushroom. Good luck with that one. I like to set you challenges, you know, it's not just me who's being challenged here. So, the rest of the Halloween suggestion list is the brutal woodchuck picked a poisonous plant for the watery burgomaster, that's a European type of mare. The deceased griffin dug deep into the sackcloth pockets of the great vicar. The aggressive centaur peered through binoculars at the gullible acrobat. Or last but not least, the humungous vampire angrily washed the engorged cheese. Gotta love it. Why not write a story about an engorged cheese? Or indeed, a humongous vampire who is washing it angrily. This is a really old Exquisite Corpse, actually, from long before the podcast. So I just had to root this one out. I've never managed to write a short story on it. Maybe I will sometime. Maybe you will. Not just sometime, but by the 8th of October. So get scribbling. Okay. Anything between 400 and 2,000 words. Drop me a line at annatizard.com. Just click on any contact button at the bottom of any page. It's just there on the footer. Or send me a comment on the Brainstorium page in the comments box. Get writing, people. I usually say, go forth and be inspired, but come forth, be inspired, and come forth. Submit your story. Until next time.